It's the show that moves faster than Hunter Biden after an all-you-can-sniff Colombian buffet. It's Bullet Point Nation. I'm Michael Loftus. Who are you?
I'm Judd Dunning.
Okay, this is the fastest moving show on the internet. We got four big topics, a wild card. Judd knows what he's talking about. I've got an earpiece like Joe Biden. We're going to break it down for you. Judd, what's bullet point number one?
Salute the Marine. Okay, moving on. Bullet point number one, Mike Lindell's Day from Hell, followed by barricaded White House, a Trump barred from intelligence briefings, and a Smartmatic lawsuit.
Ooh, baby. Bullet point number two.
Bullet point number two, Justice Neil Gorsuch to Newsom, you're illegally, easy for me to say, you're illegally restricting the First Amendment, the right to worship, and you're not a scientist.
Oh, goodness gracious. Bullet point number three.
Time gets rational and releases the secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election, and so did the Loftus Party.
Of course, now the only thing that's better than bullet point number three is bullet point number four.
Good math. Bullet point number four, forget those silly executive orders, all 38 of them. It's time for fun with bills being a Democrat-controlled Congress. HR 1 and HR 127 coming down the pike.
We have got all that plus a wild card, but it only works if you stay where you are and come back after this sweet graphics package. Judd, do the honors. Okay, we've got to dive in. It's a big show and time's a wasting. Let's go right to bullet point number uno.
Boom. Mike Lindell's Day from Hell. So, Michael, I had a little chat before we started the show. Start the timer, producer. We both respectively work in these news organizations that we're going to be talking about, Fox and Newsmax. It's a great honor. Complicated day. Everybody's running scared. Mike, a patriot, believes he has evidence that he wants to experience due process on. Newsmax brings him on to talk about how his Twitter was banned, but it relates to his documentary about the election itself. So they start talking about free speech. They get uncomfortable, and Bob Sellers, gets off the set. So it was a dramatic news moment in history. I have a lot of thoughts on this. Michael, after you.
It really, really was a dramatic moment. Mike Lindell, he's never afraid to talk. He was just going a mile a minute. Here's what I want to know. When did this subject become taboo? Like Rachel Maddow, Lawrence O'Donnell, half of CNN, all they did for 3.5, close to 4 years was question the integrity of the 2016 election. It was Russia this, Russia that, Trump's a spy. They couldn't talk about it enough. And now, if you even mention the integrity of the 2020 election, somehow you're the boogeyman. Listen, I'm old school. If Mike Lindell says he's got absolute proof, I want to talk about it. Shouldn't we be keenly interested in protecting our democracy? I think it was Nancy Pelosi that said that. We've got to protect the democracy. So now I guess it's not cool and you're not allowed to do it. Judd, take her away.
Poor guy, man. He went from the confident pillow salesman who's a recovering addict to a hand-wringing, like, you could see him sitting, every time he talks now, he's like, what am I doing? What am I saying? I mean, this guy, you got to give it up. He's got this huge enterprise that he believes the truth is more important than his standing in our nation because cancel culture has gone wild. With the free speech and the free vote, wouldn't we be like, oh, that's interesting. Hey, let's look at that, gang. We better make sure. Why is America choosing, once again, stability over justice with this cabal of media brainwashing, just making this so dangerous? Even talking about this, like, well, what should we say exactly about this? How are the algorithms going to? This is dangerous. We've never experienced this. When we were doing all this stuff about socialism and communism in North Korea last year on the show, I'm like, yeah, but never in America. Now, the reality is stunning. So to talk about Bob Sellers, so we saw it. And I, by the way, I'm on American Agenda every other week. It's an honor. I think they're great people. Bob got up flustered. And then I told my wife when we argued about it, I said, hey, I go, there's some big lawsuits coming down the pike. Newsmax is trying to preserve its long-term position because of there's so much involved in this. Sure enough, the next morning, $2.7 billion comes out for a Smartmatic suing Fox, OAN, Newsmax because of this information. So I think Bob just knew it was coming down the pike. He's trying to preserve his network, his employer. It's part of being of service. So the guy gets a pass in the middle of crazy cancel culture on my watch.
Well,
we're going on a double.
This
This is a double one. So I talked to Mike. He's like, oh, what are you doing with this long title? So we're doing a twosie because there's a lot to talk about in this topic. So reset the clock on our first bullet point. Keep going, Michael.
I can't get enough of this stuff. These aren't just like crazy people off the street. Mike Lindell runs his own multi-million-dollar company. And then you've got Lynn Wood, who's a lawyer. He's been around the block. You've got the girl who's going to release the Kraken. These aren't just like hobos that we found by the train tracks. And I saw a little piece of Mike Lindell's documentary, and there's a lot of like facts and figures. There's stuff we have to look into. And I tell you what, nothing makes me want to do it more than when they say it's taboo. They're like, ooh, you can't even talk about election meddling. It's taboo. Oh, I love me some taboo. That's
right.
That's how I got here. Taboo gets me going.
It's so right. It's exactly. It's like that kid, they leave that jelly bean on, they walk out the door. You've seen those videos? Like, just whatever you do, don't eat this candy. You're like, oh, don't tell me. I feel the same way. But now people are like, oh, by the way, I'm pulling $200,000 out of your investment because you challenged election integrity, which happened to me. Or I had another employee call me like, well, you're one of those Trump crazy Capitol riot. I'm like, dude, I was watching Kumbaya Christian prayer circles live when that stuff was going down from the Hill. So we will not be silenced. We'll be patriots. Mike and I are happy warriors for sure on this. Because you gotta laugh, you gotta laugh.
And listen, and if there is real evidence of election fraud, I'll tape it to a pigeon's leg and start sending it out to my friends. I mean, we'll find a way to communicate.
There'll be a lot of pigeon hunting at that point. All right, so give us the bell. Boom.
Bullet
so much.
point number
we can do a whole
2.
show on that.
Yeah, let's drop a deuce, Judd. What's bullet point number 2?
Depends. Our audience, half of our audience is like, yeah, oh, that's great. I love cards. All right, bullet point number 2. Justice Neil Gorsuch to Newsom, you're illegally restricting the First Amendment right to worship. And by the way, you're not scientists. So this was a great week. Mike and I covered this all year. I mean, we've got stripping pastors. I went to casinos during the height of the lockdown, sat by 6 people shoulder to shoulder. We all know the hypocrisy of this. And suddenly after the election, funny enough, they're pushing this through because Newsom's in the middle of a recall, so he's pulling back. And right as he's pulling back, the court actually steps up. So as we all know what happened, Gorsuch just said, hey, since the arrival of COVID-19, California has openly imposed more stringent regulations on religious institutions than on many businesses. The state spreadsheet summarized its pandemic rules, even assigns places of worship to their own row. So they just took the calculations of restaurants and said, this makes no sense. We've all known it's been a war on our culture.
How sad is it that common sense had to go all the way to the Supreme Court? That this had to go. You can get on a metal tube and fly across the country for hours on end with hundreds of strangers, but you can't go to church. You can go to the grocery store with hundreds of strangers, but you can't go to church. You can go to a restaurant, but the list goes on and on and on. It's freedom of religion. It's sad that this went all the way to the Supreme Court. However, but I want to say this. It's nice to be reminded that Justice Gorsuch is still around. Good for him. I mean, right now, I imagine Justice Roberts is just like pissed off in his bathroom, like, I should have been able to ruin this. I should have been able to ruin this.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy? I mean, we definitely know that China, I mean, if you look at the interrelationships to China that have been applied toward Roberts, that have been applied toward Biden, a lot of the people that are actually really passionate for this new government have ties to our biggest like arch enemy at the current time with this zero-sum game of taking down the United States with their money. And it appears it could have gotten into our courts for another day with a weaponized DOJ and FBI. We'll never know. I loved what Gorsuch said, though. He said, when a state so obviously targets religion for different treatment, our job becomes essential. Obviously target with the whole time. We're like, hey, man, how do you get through the plague? You go to church, dude. It's like, please stop the plague. It's like a war on prayer. It's like, God forbid prayer could be the ultimate vaccine. Guess what? We didn't even need a vaccine because most of this has been a hijacked hoax.
Yeah, that about does it for me. I'm glad Gorsuch is there protecting our freedom of religion. We got bullet point number 3.
One more. Come on. I gotta keep her on tab. Okay. Bullet point number 3, red, blue, magenta, Loftus Nation, Bullet Point Nation. Bring all the crews together here. All right. Bullet point number 3. Time gets rational. It's significant. They got rational at least, and released the secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. So Michael Loftus on the Loftus Party on his channel, which did a fantastic job, has been pumping out a lot of videos, buddy, covered this. So take it away, Mike.
This was terrifying. This was pretty much Time magazine bragging about how a secret cabal of very wealthy people changed election rules, changed law, influenced opinion, made sure that the media coverage was in a certain way. It's how a very small group of people made sure their candidate won. And they go, it sounds like the election was rigged. It was fortified. Well, I'd rather not have my elections fortified. One of the things that this cabal did was put the pressure on social media to not even allow a whiff of election meddling and fraudulent outcomes to even exist. So they are part of the giant censorship and tamp down, and they went out of their way to control public opinion. This was the most unhealthy article I've ever read about the state of affairs in our democratic republic, and Time magazine wants a pat on the back. Look how we did it. Look how we did it. It's incredibly disturbing.
It's true. Thank you. Appropriate. And then they end it with democracy won in the end. The will of the people, whose people, prevailed. But it's crazy in retrospect that this is what it took to put on an election in the United States of America. It was some kind of redeeming pander to the base of this. I mean, look, if you look at Lindell's numbers, right, he's saying 80 to 69. And that's an interesting thing. They're talking about how elections were stolen and hacked. And we know that things are being hacked. Heck, the FBI is hacking they don't have to hack the B of A. We're just letting people in the internet all the time. Obviously, hacking is real. So we completely threw out mail-in ballot fraud in this situation. But this cabal, which is one big issue. Then we threw out the software issue. Now we threw out international violation of our vote, which we know has already been in place. So we took all 3 of those, go implausible reality. But then they break down how the mainstream media colluded with academia, colluded with Hollywood, and then colluded with some of the people on the Hill in a strategy of Zoom calls and a series of organized grassroots activism that suddenly disappeared once it was over. I mean, isn't that, it's interesting because, the antitrust laws are, we can't break up these now politicized bodies, but these bodies are 70% dominant, but they're not dominant over democracy, which stands higher than the politicization of private companies. And they're heralding the success, saying that democracy won, but it was really politicized big business that that took over the election. So it's probably the biggest conundrum of you and I. It's the closest that we've come to socialism and communism in our lives since we were born in, the late 80s.
Yeah. It's not going to get better than that. Bullet point number 4, Judd.
Bullet point number 4, Michael Loftus. Here we go. I'm a little bit behind on the scroll. Oh, okay. So here we go. Bullet point number 4. Not only is it 38 executive orders coming down the pike, beating out, actually it was 28 formal, beating out FDR's 30 that he did. FDR, the transform the nation king of our entire presidential history, and Joe has actually matched and exceeded him now. But now we've got a Democratic-controlled Congress with two very scary bills coming down the pike. So we're focusing on the executive orders, but we've got HR 1 and HR 127 coming. Michael Loftus, you want to opine for a moment before I break down the details?
This is going to hurt my little brain, but this is why we need every member of the GOP to stand up. We need people to scream from the mountaintops that we will not allow this. We need sensible Democrats like Joe Manchin. With this HR 1, the way they want to change the voting that happens in America, that's it. It's lights out for the GOP. You'll have one party rule. The entire nation will look like California, and California ain't looking so hot.
Not at all. I mean, definitely. I mean, if you actually look at the rolls of California, California could have been radically closer than was reported as well. I'm going to continue. I don't care if someone calls me treasonous or seditious. I was in Ohio in the last election and saw buses of minority coming in with food and everything, voting multiple times in front of my eyes. I've seen actual graft, so I'm not going to pander to anybody. But where they could take it next is on steroids, right? And that's what this bill says. Same day registration is legal. You can vote the very last minute. So no planning as a conscious citizen. National voter registration, meaning ballot harvesting nationally, legal. Felons can vote, legal. Illegals can vote. Why are we opening up the borders? Legal. Statehood for PR and DC, throwing the Senate, lock and control. 16 years older can vote. Why? Is this now a protected class? We barely trust the 18-year-olds. No voter IDs. Vote as much as you can travel on election day. Federal Election Commission run by the ruling party. Now this is the gravy. So right now they're the ruling party. So they're going to plan to lock this up as long as they can. Poll worker harassment penalties are like 3x. You can't even challenge somebody. Overpower state-run elections. Now the states, and this was the cases in all of the swing states, was that the states themselves have to be aligned their constitution to our constitution, thus federalism and state governments, right? So in this situation, the feds would have dominance on all of this. So midnight voting, et cetera, could all be controlled from Capitol Hill. This is the most dangerous piece of legislation right after a steal, right after they put a barricade around the White House they don't want to take down, right after they've barred Trump they're trying to bar Trump for the first time from having intel on presidential intel. This is the most aggressive South America feeling period in the United States of America.
If we know anything about the Democrats, they're not shy about wanting to grab more power, and they will do anything to get it. This isn't one where we can just kind of hang out and hopefully it'll pass by. No, we have to get loud about this. We cannot have this. Otherwise, we might as well just secede. I'll be in Texas.
Yeah. Well, and we got to go for a minute more on this. We got to finish this second one. But this is a thing. This is a time not to break from a party. It's not a time to this idea of a third party. You know, everybody that has voted for impeachment should be watched like a hawk and be primaried. Everybody who's in our party has to band together. And how can we get around this? I've been thinking a lot about this. Is, you know, what do we still have? We still have the courts. We have the private courts and the state level courts, all the way to the Supreme Court. We should start investigating and playing the same. Who can we defame and take out of the balance of Congress? Who can we take out of the Senate? Left or right? We'll focus on the left. Try to win our balance back, because we still have the courts, America. That's something they can't take away from us. Justice exists outside of the three branches for us, by us. So I hope we have to take aim. We have to win back. We have to play the war that they've played toward us back. The second bill, which is crazy, is HR 127. We're running low on time, so I'll be quick and I'll give you the bullet points, and Michael, you can opine. So Sheila Jackson Lee started this. So every gun legally owned, your old flintlock, my powder gun here that hasn't been loaded in 200 years, must be on a federal database that everybody can see. In order to possess a firearm, the owner has to be licensed. The owner also has to have insurance. You also have to have a criminal background check, a psychological evaluation, 24-hour training course, therefore putting it out of the reach of most people who aren't going to do anything about it. And yet we already have 394 million guns on the street. This is right next to the voting bill, two of the biggest pieces of legislation. Let me tell you something. It's not a joke. It is a war it is a war on traditional American culture.
Yeah, and like we were just talking about the whole religious thing where Gorsuch and the Supreme Court had to weigh in. Like, what part of shall not be infringed do these morons not understand? It's almost boring that we have to keep having this same old argument, but I guess we do. And they're going to attack it from every angle. Oh, you got to have insurance. Oh, you got to be licensed if you want to have ammo. Oh, you've got to go through a mental health. Like, I don't know how we do it, but like once again, by making election fraud taboo, this makes me just want to go get more guns. Like if you're a gun manufacturer,
Right.
this is the best news ever. Because like they always swear, we're not coming for your guns, we're not coming for your guns. Then they come for the guns. And then the gun manufacturers sell a boatload. And good for them. Buy a gun, everybody. Buy a gun. If you have one, you need two. Get plenty of ammo. Go, go, go. Train yourself on how to use it, but you need more.
And anybody who is against gun control right now has not enjoyed the true exhilaration of shooting someone in your house when they're stealing your stuff with your wife and kids in the other room. I mean, that is, no, I'm kidding. But the point is like, that's what it's about too. It's about our domestic security. They can't take away our alarm system. It's about protecting our families as well. And that is crossing the line, right? In our home. It's our home. Moving on into promo time. Michael Loftus, tell us what's going on in the Loftus Party. Fox News, your world, sir.
Always the best content. Some pretty sweet stuff at the loftusparty.com. All kinds of wonderfulness there. And then everyone has to go to Fox Nation and watch my stand-up special live from Nashville. It's pretty dope. Check it out. It's
Nice.
almost as cool as a book.
It is almost as cool as a book. And that book is, boy, I tell you what, if I'd known I'd get so much ability to speak off a book, I would have done it a long time ago. Because I'm not somebody you need to tell to shut up. And radio is great, man. So we're doing a ton of radio for the book. I've probably done like 50 shows. Shout out to Sandy Pundits. They've done a great job with Newsmax. It also, we now have a article. I just published a new article, so check it out. Newsmax Insider. So we do that like every week, every other week. Supposed to, we can choose bi-weekly or weekly. And then it's got me on American Agenda with Bob Zellers and the National Report. So it's been a lot of fun. We're getting out the word. And to be honest, when I wrote it, I didn't know it was going to be this important to study conservatism. So check it out. If you want to see the book, you can get it on Amazon. This actually gives me a moment to itch my nose. Somebody's got an itchy nose, so I can turn around. And Amazon, just look for Judd Dunning. You can see the book. So thanks for that, Michael.
That's fantastic. Now, the only way we can make this show any better is with a sweet-ass wild card. What's this week's wild card?
This week's wild card, as we get our producer off of Instagram. All right, there you go. Gotcha. There we go. This week's wild card is great because it's interesting because there's a fantasy campaign, there's a real campaign. But, Sexy Joe looks good on the outside on GQ in Britain. So lay it down, Michael.
I'm hoping you have more pictures because this could not be more. And that one is fantastic. I love it when the media decides, oh, we need to take this person to the next level. We have to convince. These pictures are hilarious. Trying to make Joe Biden, the hair sniffer extraordinaire, just cool. Look at him. He's ready for a day on the beach. Don't you want to hang out with Joe Biden? He's so cool, you guys. The more they try to make this guy cool, the worse it gets. So GQ, continue. By all means, continue. You're in trouble when your president doesn't have cognitive memory and you have to CG him into live action scenes, right?
I mean, pretty. That's true. That's pretty much it. I mean, from the basement, let's take his head. Let's move it up here. Now here you are. Where are you? You're in the back of a truck in Kansas on the perfect evening, and you can play guitar, much like Michael Loftus.
Could that be any more pandering? I mean, just look at that. There's the Budweiser bottles. He's a country music singer. The flag is going. I say, if Joe were to actually see that level of patriotism, he'd have a heart attack, and Kamala would be getting the call.
I love the pink. He's got the pink Cadillac. You know, it's great because appropriately, I guess he too has lived in the long tradition of womanizing. I saw some of his old videos. He was a cocky young guy. You know, he did. I will say this for Joe. He set his sights on the presidency at a very young age. He's done anything and everything to get there. It's made him extremely wealthy for a public servant. His son has a very successful side business that, would make any father proud. And now he's got these great new friends in China. He gets to travel the world, be treated like royalty. I mean, there's loyalty would be that was the right faux pas. So yeah, give it up for CG Joe, baby. CG Joe, amazing.
CG Joe on GQ. That was a phenomenal show, Judd. I feel smarter just having been here.
That's right. So, and of course, you're now out of the Matrix with Michael and I. You know, I'd have to say, look, the news is pretty smart out there. This is a time for you to look at, get your sources from some people. Look, Mike and I want to keep it fun for the next 4 years because it's going to be a long 4 years. So come and see us every week. Try to hit what's important, where they're attacking our freedom, have a few laughs, and get to the bottom line. And I think on that point, Michael being the superior orator, bring it home, buddy.
We love you. Thanks for being here. Smash that like button, subscribe, and we will see you next time on Bullet Point Nation.